everyone, and welcome back to Knights of the Pageless Library, where we are a little podcast dedicated to reviewing audiobooks. I am Bo Knight, and joined as always by my brother Ryan Knight. And today we have a special treat for you where me and Ryan are going to rank our top 5 narrators.
Yeah, and this list now, you gotta remember, is probably an ever-evolving thing also.
No, this is a definitive list, and they're all right.
You didn't carve yours into stone like I did?
No, mine's on my skin, dude. Let's be real.
Yeah, I got these tattooed on my ass cheek.
No, I meant with like a knife.
Oh, God. Yeah, so, I mean, I would say if I had to guess, my top 3 are probably solid, set in stone. But I had to do a little bit of soul searching for my 5 and 4. So
I think I did too, but I also think my 5 and 4 are pretty strong candidates.
Sure. I'm curious to hear them. So just for all of you who know, like, we probably have a general idea of what each other's are, but we have not discussed this beforehand. So these will be a surprise to each of us as well.
Before we started talking, can you give the criteria that you kind of went by a little bit, so people kind of know where we're coming from?
Yeah, so I'm basing my top 5 on the amount of entertainment I have kind of gotten from these narrators. So now, yeah, you might be a person who you listen to like a Scott Brick book and you go on Facebook every time somebody asks for a good narrator and you're like, Scott Brick, because I listened to one book one time of his that I really enjoyed. I tried not to do that with these. I tried to base this on the amount of entertainment I have gotten from these people, not just based on necessarily one title. However, there's one of them that I'll probably be kind of a hypocrite about on that.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily either. I'm not going to include in my list of reasons other books of theirs that I probably have also not listened to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think the only thing probably that separates mine from yours is I put a couple people on here that I find like are extremely quotable and have like really unique voices that stick in my head a lot.
Sure.
So
and
like so that's like probably the only other thing. Enjoyment is definitely part of it. And for me too, like the frequency of like how often I come back to those books that they do, and that I find like they've improved it, like that they are so much a part of the experience for me. I feel like that's a part of it too.
Right. And I would agree with that. And that's kind of what I based all mine. Not necessarily all of mine off of. Like I said, my number 5 is kind of a wild card for me coming up with my number 5. I really did have to do some
Okay.
searching.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So we're gonna do these in descending order. So yeah, we'll go from 5 to 1. 1 obviously being our best and final. So for my number 5, I actually have Claire Danes.
Okay.
Was who read The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay.
So I got her on here because when I was kind of scrolling back through my Audible stuff, trying to kind of just get an idea of somebody I might include in this list, I really hung up on this book because while I've only listened to A Handmaid's Tale once, and that was for the podcast and for the review we did, her performance in that really stuck with me. I mean, this book settled itself somewhere in my soul because of her performance and because of the story together. And I just think that she really brought that story to life for me. She did a great job of selling kind of this dystopian, very dreary, very scary world that was written in that book. And that is why I included her on my list.
So for my number 5, I did Carolyn McCormick. So you would know her from the first book in the Area X series. She does Annihilation.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
And she also does tons and tons of James Patterson books. So we grew up probably listening to her unknowingly a lot.
Sure.
And for me, I think she is my favorite female narrator. I think she has like the best range when she comes to do like men and other things like that, or like monsters and stuff like that. I feel like she does a very good job, and she's really good at like putting kind of like suspense on someone's voice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I actually think I almost put her on mine as well for the that first book in Area X.
Okay, so I'll switch it up and I'll go next if that's okay.
Yeah.
So for my number 4, I have Roy Dotrice, who
Okay.
is most known for his Game of Thrones series.
Sure.
And I know there is like a little bit of a swap in quality there, but I don't feel like that's his fault. But
Didn't he have
I
like
think
a stroke or something?
he did have a stroke, yeah.
Holy shit.
Between Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons.
Wow. Yeah.
So he does get a couple of the names wrong, but I think he does like a fantastic job in all the other books. I find him very iconic and quotable too, and I think he has like the canon voices for a lot of these characters in my head.
Sure.
And this is a series I've spent so much time with that I have just grown so fond of his voice over time. I find him very comforting, and I don't know, I always enjoy listening to him.
Yeah, definitely a solid pick there for sure. I find it interesting. I saw a post, I can't remember where, but somebody was asking about listening to a Game of Thrones,
Mhm.
and some people do not like him as a narrator at all. Which
Yeah.
I actually kind of thought that was interesting though. I think he is a solid narrator in a lot of ways. Yeah, his voice is a little bit more slow. The way he speaks is more slow and deliberate. But I mean, he does that Game of Thrones series, which is what, almost 200 hours worth.
Yeah, just one series, and
yeah.
he's I feel like it's really, really good, and how many characters he keeps straight is kind of baffling to me.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. Okay, so for my number 4, I have a narrator who, the reason I picked him is actually kind of lost to time.
What?
I have Nick Landrum from the original Dexter recordings.
Oh, dude, I forgot about him.
So, if for any of you who don't know what I'm talking about, because you can't I don't even know if you can get these anymore. So for the first several books in the Dexter series, Nick Landrum was the narrator, and at a certain point, the author of the books picked up the books and decided he could narrate them himself. So he did the later books in the series, and then he went back and re-recorded the originals with his voice instead of Nick Landrum's, and you can no longer, as far as I'm aware, at least on Audible, get Nick Landrum's recording of those books.
Which is a damn shame, because that man he's got some masterclass in that stuff, I think.
I think so as well, which is why I had to include him in my list, because I've spent a lot of time listening to the Dexter series. I've listened to it multiple times through. Always been a really enjoyable series for mine, and I feel like Nick Landrum's voice really encapsulates Dexter as a character.
Dude, I know like if I would have remembered him, he would be on my list too, because he has a quotable line in one of the books where like Dokes asks him a question. He's like, "I don't give a rusty possum fart what you think." And just the way he says it is so like exactly like how you picture Dexter. It's so perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I thought his performances in those books was very solid. Now, Nick Landrum does have other books he has narrated, so it's not like you cannot find anything of his. But these books, for me, is what really solidified his place on this list of mine.
I have somebody on my number 3 spot that I feel like is going to be on your list too. It's Jim Dale.
Okay.
Mr. Harry Potter himself.
Heck yeah.
Oh man, he does a fantastic job, does he not?
Oh yeah.
Oh, could you imagine listening to books read by anybody else?
There are other versions of that, narrated by Stephen Fry, that people say are some of the best.
Okay.
However, I personally, I don't know if I could listen to these books narrated by anyone other than Jim Dale. I would agree with that for sure.
I feel like he does a better job of voicing Dumbledore than they do acting him.
Sure.
Just himself.
I mean, so
it's crazy to me.
Just so to build on this conversation a little bit, my number 3 is also Jim Dale.
No, it's not. You're
Yes.
kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
Okay, yeah. So you go ahead and talk about him a little bit.
I for the same reason, why he makes it high on my list is because, I mean, I grew up listening to these books, both when they would come out, and then re-listening to them before the next book in the series would come out, and it's such a treat that he does the first to the last book.
It is because like the voices kind of stay the same.
Yes,
all the way through.
All the way through, yeah. And supposedly Jim Dale also received like an award, like a Guinness World Record, for the amount of voices he was able to do in one...
the Goblet of Fire, right?
Right. Yes. Because of how many characters were in that book, and each of them had their own unique voice that he was able to stick with through the story, which is an incredible amount of talent. It really is. Yeah, that's why he definitely lands on my number 3 as well.
Okay, well, you do number 2 then.
Okay, my number 2. I'm curious to know if your 1 and 2 are the same.
I'm starting to think it's probably the same.
Well, let's find out. My number 2 is Bronson Pinchot.
Oh my God, you put him at number 2?
I put him at number 2. I did. So for me, Bronson Pinchot, I was the Grim Noir Chronicles is really where Bronson Pinchot stole my heart with his performances in those books. I listened to those books over and over again, multiple times. I always can come back to those books and listen to them. Now, Bronson Pinchot has tons of things he has done. This man is an actor. This man has TV shows. This dude is super multifaceted in so many ways.
Not to mention a great guy to talk to, and he's just nice.
Also that, yes, we are so fortunate that he took time out of his day to come on our podcast and talk to us. That was incredible.
Well, okay.
And
I don't want to add to this conversation too much.
Okay. I understand why. I'll just finish out my thoughts here. Between the Grim Noir Chronicles, written by Larry Correia and voiced by Bronson Pinchot, I just really grew to love the way this guy does his narration.
Mm-hmm.
And then every single time I would come across another book that had his name attached to the narration, I knew that even if the book itself was like a 5 out of 10, it's immediately going to jump up to at least an 8 or 9 out of 10 if you got Bronson Pinchot to narrate it, because he just brings that stuff. He brings the character. He brings whatever voice is needed for those characters. He knows how to bring it and put it into the story to make it that much better.
Yeah. So for my number 2, I have Oliver Wyman.
Okay.
Just, yeah, I mean, so I know him a lot from the Monster Hunter series.
Yep.
And it is interesting because his voice does kind of evolve as he goes, but I feel like he really is good at like kind of finding characters and like nailing down how they should speak.
Sure.
And he's really good at like doing like the grunts and the growls and like all the monster sounds that he's able to do, and some of like the screeching that he does, I feel like must have been painful for him.
Sure.
But I really love his performances and all those things, and I feel like he's very additive to me too. I guess I haven't listened to a lot of his other stuff, but for me, it's like him and the Monster Hunter series just go hand in hand, and without him, like one of my favorite books, I feel like wouldn't be near as good.
Sure. Can I segue off of that?
Yeah.
Because my number 1 is Oliver Wyman.
See, we flip-flopped it. My number 1's Bronson Pinchot.
I had a feeling, and honestly I had to go back and forth on this a bit. The reason I ended up with Oliver Wyman,
what makes Oliver Wyman better for you, and then I'll say what makes Bronson Pinchot better for me.
Okay. The number 1 reason I feel like I put Oliver Wyman as my number 1 is that I feel like I have actually spent some of the most time with him as a narrator.
Okay.
Because there's so many books in the Monster Hunter series, a lot of which that I've listened to multiple times over and over again. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours listening to this man talk, and never for 1 minute do I ever wish it was somebody else or that he did something different. He just seems to hit all the right spots, the voices, and I agree, some of his voices do evolve a little bit over time. But once he finds that voice and nails it down, it's almost always just perfect for the character that he nails it down to.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said.
Plus, just again, we had him on the show, and what a joy to talk to. What,
Oh yeah, you're right. He plays D&D. He should be number one. You're right.
no, I just for me, I don't know. I did go back and forth on which one of them was going to be my top, and it was really hard, to be honest, to put them in one of those spots. But I feel like every time I was like comparing stuff, Oliver was just winning them each time.
See,
So now,
and for me, the thing that puts Bronson Pinchot like a hair above Oliver is the fact that he is able to do like he can globetrot with his accent and like nail them all.
and you're right. You are right.
And I feel like him and Oliver, like you said, like they. Other than I feel like Bronson Pinchot doesn't ever really wander with his voice. He kind of picks one to start with and kind of keeps nailing it the whole way.
Sure.
And I for me, like so many of his lines are just like they stick in my head. Like Bronson Pinchot he has so many like very quotable lines to me from audiobooks, which I know is a weird concept, but like he has so many like standout moments in all of his books for me that I've listened to. Like even in Area X, I feel like he does such a good job in Authority. And like every like you said already, like every book that he's attached to, you're automatically adding 4 or 5 stars to the score just because of how good of an actor he really is.
I agree with all of that. And again, it's why I had a hard time nailing down.
No,
which
I feel like they're both all stars.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, yeah, if you see one of those names on the title in the narration portion, you're going to get something special out of it.
That is very true. You cannot go. I mean, I feel like you really can't go wrong with anybody on either list.
Yeah, I almost wanted to tell you to give me your worst narrators, but I knew it'd be kind of hard.
That is such a tough one for me because I had one bad experience, I feel like it's not fair to say that they are always a poor narrator.
True. You want to know which one does stand out in my mind, though?
Of course.
I'm curious to know what you think. You remember that book we reviewed way back when we started? It's like our number 4 book called Junk.
Oh, yeah.
With John Waters narrating it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have put him as my worst narrator I've ever listened to.
Yeah, from my experience with Junk, he did not do a very good job either.
No, and I'm pretty sure he's an actor, like a big name, not big name, but he is an actor, like Hollywood actor. So obviously he's a talented person, but I just don't think that
I feel like voice acting is a
him.
different game than just regular acting.
Exactly.
As like Bronson Pinchot and Oliver Wyman, I think are perfect examples of. I mean, Bronson Pinchot, he can do everything. I'm sure he's also like a fantastic chef, and he can probably fix your car. He's not a fair example, but I feel like there's a lot of nuance to being a really good narrator, and it takes a lot more than just acting chops, I think.
Sure. Someone who almost made my list, if we want to do like an honorable mention, is Roger Clark. Was very close to making.
Yeah, Roger Clark should be on there. Oh wait.
I felt like I hadn't spent enough time with him as a narrator, if that makes sense. Having listened to the Dead Acre series stuff, which is awesome, and he does an incredible job at that.
The only knock for Roger Clark for me that would keep him off of my list is I feel like he does a really good cowboy, but not a lot of like other amazing things. And I would like to see him do more like a more globe-trotting story. I would be curious how he handled all that.
Sure. Yeah, that would be interesting to know. I do find it very interesting. So if you hear him speak just in general conversations, because he's like Irish American and has a slight Irish American accent, doesn't sound anything like he does when he narrates, like the Dead Acre books. Which does make it more impressive to me that he's able to find that character and stay in that character for so long. But I do agree with you. I don't necessarily know. I haven't listened to enough to know what his other range of characters would be, if that makes sense.
Also, I feel like if you see a name, if you see a guy with a cowboy hat on and it's a book and it says Roger Clark, narrated by Roger Clark, it's gonna be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also a fair thing to say. That I don't think you could go wrong with that.
I like. Let's be honest. He's probably the best cowboy ever. Like, no. Do you not feel that way?
Yeah. At least, especially for that, like the picture you get on the front of Cold as Hell. You know.
Yeah.
He embodies that look of that character.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm sorry, I don't have my list right next to me. I had an honorable mention, but I kind of forgot. Oh, actually, I don't know how to say her name. Her name is XE Sands. She does the final section in Area X. She does like some little bits from the psychologist's point of view.
Oh.
And honestly, her performance is freaking amazing. It's so good. I've never heard her in anything else, but just from those little bits in that book, she does such a fantastic job.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I listened to that, so I don't
know how to pronounce her
that.
first name.
I'm gonna see if I can pull it up real quick. I'll see if I can help you out here. It's probably something like Zay. If I
You
had
think
to guess. Zay Sands, maybe. She has a lot of other titles.
I've never heard. It looks like a lot of like bodice ripper kind of stuff, which is not really my genre. But maybe I'm missing out because she has always kind of stood out to me. She has such a small role in that book, and it's kind of a short book anyway. She maybe only has like an hour of total speaking time, but like every time she comes on, I love those parts.
Interesting. Oh yeah, I'm listening to a couple samples. Yeah, I don't remember those, but that's good to know that it stood out so strongly with you for sure. Well, what do you think? Got anything else on narrators? I know we've talked about this before. I feel like every single time I am scrolling, whether it's Reddit, Facebook, whatever, and I see someone ask for top narrators, not many times do someone from our list show up.
Yeah. Who usually gets number one? What have you seen the most commonly?
Scott Brick. Scott, almost always his name gets brought up, which is fair. Scott Brick is a good narrator. I've only heard a few of his, works.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what it is that draws everybody to have his name as their number one, though. I don't really get it.
I don't know either. I don't have any. There's nothing wrong with Scott Brick. I think he's definitely in the top 10 list.
Sure.
But I don't know. I guess he doesn't have that like secret sauce that kind of like that somebody like Oliver and Bronson Pinchot have, or Jim Dale.
I feel like the few titles I've heard of Scott Brick's, he just sounds the same. Like,
yeah,
he is just talking in his voice, which there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, like, if you're going to embody all these characters of a story, I expect at least a little bit of nuance, and I feel like I don't necessarily get that when I hear a Scott Brick title.
And maybe it's because we lack the intelligence that we like a unique voice for everybody, and other people are better at understanding books.
And that could be. I'm not going to deny that.
I don't know. Like, how can you not listen to Hard Magic and not like immediately fall in love with like every single character?
That's what I mean. Yeah, and each character is so unique. I mean, you know who's talking before without there being a so-and-so said. You know what I mean? So
this is a guy who can do Faye and Sullivan.
Right, in the same breath.
Yeah, like in the same sentence. Like how can you not?
Oh, I get it. Trust me, I get it.
That's why
they're on my list.
It's funny that our top three are like basically the same.
And I wondered if that was going to happen.
I kind of thought it would happen too, but that's why I kind of wanted to keep it secret a little bit. Maybe there would be some surprises.
Sure. And there kind of was. I mean, that was good to know that our 4 and 5 were different, at least.
Yeah.
That would have been really weird if all 5 were the exact same.
Yeah, that would have been a little sus, right?
Yeah, a little too mind meld-ish. I guess what I would say to anybody else listening to this is thank you, and please feel free to share with us your thoughts. So let us know who your favorite narrator is. If you agree with our list, if you don't, let us know.
And I guess if you guys like this kind of ranking system, we could do that for books too, if that was something you guys were interested in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's something we could do, is put out series or even just individual books as, kind of our top 5 and
Yeah, we could even go genre if you guys wanted to do that.
yeah. And that if you want to hear our opinion about it, because again, even though I carved mine into stone, I'm not
No,
saying
this is a definitive list.
I'm gonna bury my stone carving in the back of this hotel, and hopefully somebody will dig it up someday. And
What is this nonsense?
But yeah, just again, these are our opinions, and we'd appreciate hearing yours as well. That's
Yeah, I would love some lists from you guys to see like what you guys think.
sure, absolutely. You got anything else on this one?
Just to thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. Please come argue with us. I'd love it.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you guys all for listening, and we hope to catch you in the next one.